Welcome back, David. Another week, another video. This I
Hmm.
want to pick up your brain because we have a lot of things that are popping up and re-emerging as spring comes up. And I think it's re-emerging because people have more and more issues with health, to be honest. And that's gadget use. How beneficial are, like, I can tell your red light therapy is always on when we are recording this stuff. And are they friends? Are they our enemies? And what's there? So what are the actual impacts on health? And it came up to for one particular reason because I was speaking to somebody about HRV, which he tracks on our Oura ring, and it's always low. I never track mine on HRV on my Oura ring. I always use different method, which is completely unrelated, and that gadget is used for 20 seconds a day or so. No, I think I'm lying now, 60 seconds just to check my HRV, and then I put it away.
Hmm.
So that HRV is completely different to Oura Ring, which I only looked up last week. I never even noticed that. On Oura Ring is always extremely low. On there, I can see the changes depending on my body weight, depending on my mood, depending on my sleep, nutrition, and so on and so on. So what's actually happening with these low level frequency gadgets that we put on our body that we can use for sleep, we can use for recovery, we can use whilst we are flying maybe somewhere. Some of them
Yeah,
are,
but before we get into all of that, why don't you tell people how you actually track your HRV? Like, what's the method you use?
so I put a
That's not.
strap around my heart. I sit down, I do these breathing exercises, same exact stuff for 60 seconds or so, and then I take it off and it tells me exact the changes that's happening. That's it.
So you are actually getting a snapshot. You're getting a snapshot in the morning of what your HRV at that state in your body, meaning after you've recovered for the night, before you're getting ready for the day, and you take it manually, essentially, and you're getting a snapshot. That is an excellent way to also think about these electromagnetic, low level frequency electromagnetic field devices. I'm not saying that they don't provide good data or even data in general, because it's not really about constant monitoring. Constant monitoring can also lead to faulty, how would I say, assumptions, because your body's going to be going through stages of parasympathetic nervous system stimulation, sympathetic nervous stimulation, and the devices aren't smart enough. Well, let me rephrase that. The devices have an algorithm. The algorithm is to be followed, and there is no excuses around that algorithm as far as like the actual information that it's allowed to give you. We talked a little bit about this with like 23andMe and how they actually collect a lot of data from you, but they're not allowed to give you the full picture. These devices are very similar. Why is that? Because the manufacturer is the one that governs how much data you receive and how you receive that data, right? So there are this is called manipulation, right? Like if you all of a sudden start behaving in a way that's more how would I say, socially acceptable, you can get better readings. When you start behaving in ways that make it so that you don't behave as socially acceptable, you can get worse readings. That is a reality of what's called data manipulation, just like what we've seen with I won't mention the name, but certain shots that have been promoted and things of that nature. There's data manipulation around how many people are actually injured by them versus not, because the manufacturers control the data, because they control the studies and they control all of that. These devices are not immune to that realm, right? And so that's really that. Now, here's a more important thing, right? I'm going to share my screen on some devices that have come to my attention in terms of wearables that specifically intel or talk about sleep, right? So here is one. This is called Mind, right? And as you can tell, it's this band that you put on your head that's supposed to put you to sleep. And I mean, it says it right in here, sleep on demand, right? And the way that it's doing it is through low-level electromagnetic field stimulation.
Mm.
This is exactly what we've been talking about for 3 years. Low-level electromagnetic field stimulation can be beneficial. We've talked about that. That's what grounding is doing when you interact with the Schumann resonance of the earth. That's why it's important that you don't have other high frequency electromagnetic fields interacting with your head or brain while you sleep, because it circumvents certain sleep things. Now, this is claiming to induce certain the wavelength or the Schumann resonance of proper sleep. I'm not saying this is not what it's doing. I'm saying it probably works, because if you can induce that frequency, you're going to induce sleep correctly. Here's the problem. This is a device. It has an app, meaning that you are not the one in control of that data. Or go reference, 3 minutes back. These devices and what they give you and deliver to you are controlled by the manufacturer and the app. That means you don't actually have control of this. If the manufacturer decides to tweak or update the app or the device through software, you are along for the update, whether you like it or not, right? These can be tweaked a little bit. Now, here's another one that goes even a step further. Here's another device. It's called the Hat B. This is promoted by several influencers out there. Gary Brecka, for example. Yes, he's an influencer. He's not an actual medical person that you should entail trust into. He's an influencer, right? This particular thing is, there's this band that you put over your neck and your head. There's the sleep pad, which is like this pad that you sleep under, and uh, all of them have an app, and are going to put out. Look, it even has integration to your Whoop and all of these things. So you see how these start to get integrated, right? And it even tells you right here, right? Low level Bluetooth energy, right? Uh, 2.4 gigahertz base frequency. And it's telling you that it's going to use extremely low frequency, ELF or LF, whatever you want to call it. That's how it's working, right? These are the exact things that we've been talking about that can disturb sleep or augment sleep depending on the frequencies. This goes even a step further, and in their little ads and stuff, it tells you this Hap B device can mimic natural compounds like melatonin, caffeine, CBD, other supplements without having to consume the supplement. What does that tell you? It tells you that whoever has access to this has access to changing your behavior. That's what it really should tell you, right? When you start thinking about this from a decentralized perspective, this is a thing that's like, ooh, this could be useful, right? You immediately start thinking, oh, these are all the things that I could do with it, or how it can improve my life. But then you have to think about it like, okay, well, what are the possible negatives, right? Because people are going to ask, what are the side effects? Or they should be asking it and most people are only going to stop at like, okay, if I use it all the time, then obviously, you know, I don't want to use the melatonin setting all the time or the CBD setting. I'm like, no, 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 no. You're not thinking about it all the way through. This is a synthetic way to induce all of these different frequencies that interact in your brain and change your behavior. Anybody who has access to this device has access to your behavior and is able to modify your behavior. That's really the alarm that should go off in your head.
And this is going down the rabbit hole a little bit as well, as usual. To me, thing is like, okay, somebody's really struggling with sleep, somebody's really struggling with some kind of health implication, and they have access to this device. So what you basically lined out, it could be beneficial as long as it's not a chronic use. But if that's like that Hub B, for example, you can pair it with Whoop Band, which is obviously on you 24/7. So don't they two contradict each other now? How does that work? Because we know
Yeah,
from studies, we know that low frequency exposed 24/7 can actually affect your blood-brain barrier, and that's where all kind of things can happen wrong. So what's happening there?
Yeah, yeah, you're 100% right, right? In one hand, we have data that shows that these types of low-level electromagnetic field devices that have permanent Bluetooth on and all the kinds of things can affect cortisol levels. They can affect hormonal levels. They can affect your blood-brain barrier. That's actually kind of their primary thing, right? That's actually how the HAP-B is inducing these effects in the brain, like CBDC or melatonin. And it has to open up the blood-brain barrier in order to be successful at inducing those effects in the brain, right? So think about that, right? Your blood-brain barrier exists for a reason. It's there to protect you against other types of electromagnetic fields. And now this opens it at will. So it is one of these things where it is contradicting itself. The data is telling you one thing, and the device manufacturer is telling you a completely different thing. Doesn't this sound very familiar to what's happened over the last 5 years?
Yeah, it's very interesting. And to me, it always kind of opens up an opportunity because we both are trying to find the root cause of why something is not working. So would this be something that somebody can use to improve their sleep, essentially from scratch, but they essentially still need to figure out why are they not sleeping correctly? Because
Correct.
it's
Right. So
affecting
so
the
so
brain
so
of that
let's
barrier, and they're not eating
Mhm.
right, they're not doing many other things. Could it potentially lead to even more harm if that environment that they are trying to sleep with effect of this equipment potentially can harm them even further because of that effect that we know that constant EMF exposure can do?
Yes, 100%. So the way that you phrased it is the way that I would probably think about it, or try to pitch it to somebody who doesn't understand the intricacies of this. Is this okay? If you use this device, right? Let's just say, for example, you're somebody who's suffering from sleep problems, or somebody who chronically just doesn't get good quality sleep for whatever reason, and you don't really know why. But you try one of these devices, and all of a sudden you do get good sleep. This is what it should tell you from a first principles thinking, that there's an electromagnetic field that's disturbing your sleep, and you have fixed it by placing another electromagnetic field closer to your brain that simulates what you should be getting naturally. So that should be the proper assessment. So now you should think, okay, is it that I have a problem, or is it that the environment that I live in is the problem? And this device has now highlighted it, that that is true. So then you go, okay, I can probably use this environment to, or this device to hack my environment, but it clearly isn't changing my environment, right? And then you have to think about it this way, right? The electromagnetic field, if it is being beneficial, is not powerful enough to shield the rest of the body or induce the rest of the body into recovery. It's just for the brain, right? That's assuming that it's benign, assuming that it's benign for other things in your body. It probably isn't, right? And so then you have to think about, okay, well, this device might hinder other biological processes that don't have to do with the brain. For example, tendon and ligament hydration and tendon and ligament regeneration. Right? We know that there is data out there, and anecdotal data as well, that people that wear their Whoop, for example, on the right side of their body tend to injure the right side of their body more than the other side of their body.
I
We
have
know.
someone that I know personally who works as a physiotherapist, and most injuries he has observed, injury rise is non-negotiable. It just people get injured more. You paint it in any way you want, but he found that the people who are using any kind of gadgets usually get injured more and are chronically injured for longer unless they put the device away.
Yeah, yeah, and that's not surprising. And mostly, especially because he's a physical therapist, it tells me that it's what's called idiopathic, meaning they don't really know what's causing it, right? They think that it might be overuse injury or whatever, but they don't really have a good thing. And then they maybe get some imaging, and the imaging comes back like, oh, it kind of all looks normal, but it's obviously you're hurt. You're in pain, right? And it's almost always has to do with inflammatory responses and tendon ligament problems, especially on that side of the body, and especially in hands or feet. So the extremities, right, wherever you're supposed to be interacting with electromagnetic fields, hands and feet are where humans interact with electromagnetic fields. That's why you have sweaty palms, or the ability to sweat on your palms and the ability to sweat on the bottom of your feet. Those are the places where you should be interacting with electromagnetic fields or discharging electromagnetic fields. So if you have a device that's on you that's an electromagnetic field, you're going to experience the most, um, how would I say, negative effect at the extremities, either at the hand wrist area or at the foot ankle area, and then work its way into like maybe a knee or maybe an elbow or maybe a shoulder, things of that nature. Now, again, this is anecdotal, but what it does is it tells you, hey, the chronic use of these things is probably the problem, right? I'm not saying that the moment you put on a whoop that you're going to get an injury on your right arm.
Mm.
It's the chronic use of not letting the body be able to regenerate. So now you apply this to these, sleep devices or brain stimulation devices, whatever you want to call these, then you quickly should come to the same realization. Hey, if I can probably use these to hack my environment, but the real goal should be, how do I protect myself from the environment to begin with so that I don't have to rely on this device, right? There are ways to do that, right? Now, can everybody do that? Well, that's where an actual survey is going to come into play, right? Actually getting some monitors, actually getting a survey to see how bad it is, right? If it's really, really, really bad, your choice might only be to move, right? That is a reality, right? So I want to state that. But that's rare, right? It's rare. You'll know if you have to do that, right? You'll know because even this device probably won't be powerful enough to improve your sleep if you're close enough to other electromagnetic fields
Mm.
that are strong enough to really not be able to be blocked by traditional means. Now, when I say blocked by traditional means, there are legit devices out there. We know how to construct a building that protects you from electromagnetic fields. Imaging centers, for example, have to obey these rules so that the staff inside of them don't suffer the effects from electromagnetic fields from imaging devices. So there are shielding things that you can do inside your home, but there are even more simpler things like shielding blankets, EMF shielding blankets that you can use. These are not the same as grounding sheets. They are not the same. Grounding sheets can actually make things worse because if you are in a bad environment, you become the antenna if you're sitting on an on a grounding sheet.
I think we
A
have a full
shielding,
video of that probably last year or somewhere. I'll see if I can dig it out and put it in comments.
yeah, but anyway, a shielding blanket or shielding clothing. Right now, this is clothing that has silver interwoven into it, and same thing with the shielding blanket. What these do is they keep the electrical charge from these low-level electromagnetic fields on the surface of the material and not on the surface of your skin, right? Which is where you're going to react to an immune response or a cortisol response or a calcium ion channel response through the cells in your body, right? So
Is this something that people can test, like buy and test if their sleep improves and then determine, hey,
well, there would be that, but if you have like a device, like an actual electromagnetic field measuring device, you can do this with the blanket. You can literally get underneath the blanket and you will see that the electromagnetic field goes to nearly zero.
hmm,
Yes, I have clients that have literally bought the shielding blanket and they get underneath it and they get their little monitor out and they're like, holy crap, it went to almost zero, right? That so yes, you can test it, and I mean that it doesn't get it's not going to get any better than that as far as like how to shield yourself in a bad environment. That's probably the first thing that you should think if you get one of these devices and it does improve your sleep. You realize, oh, okay, I've somehow circumvented the electromagnetic field that's bad for me with an electromagnetic field that's good for me. I'm putting that in quotes. So now, what's the next step? Shielding myself from the bad environment, right? Actually going through the procedure of maybe getting it monitored, buying some kind of shielding clothing, shielding blankets, going out of your way, especially if you work from home, to mitigate or lessen any wireless devices, like hardwiring your internet, for example, hardwiring your keyboard and your mouse, things of that nature. will go a long way in trying to improve your environment because you've just proved to yourself that your environment is the problem, right? And then how would you continue using these devices? I would probably use them sparingly, right? Only when you know that, hey, I've gotten poor sleep for 2, 3, 4 days in a row, I'm going to use this appropriately. Now, the reason why I wouldn't use them chronically is because you don't know what you don't know. What does that mean? That means that there might be an electromagnetic field that's stimulating you to sleep correctly. And at the same time, a different electromagnetic field from the Bluetooth itself or from the connection, the wireless connection that it has with your phone, uh, that is ruining other parts of the system like tendon or ligaments, right? You don't know the long-term effects of other, because if you look at this from a nature's perspective, you get every single electromagnetic field from the sun and the planet, meaning the range goes from X-rays all the way to gamma rays, and you get some level of interaction with all of those. And certain frequencies do certain things in the body. When you start to isolate them, now you only do specific actions only, and there are other frequencies in there. There has to be because there's a communication device that may be inducing other problems that are not related to sleep, right? And so,
And is this like similar to what we both observe that people who live in more populated areas, more technologically advanced areas, start to get really low testosterone and so on and so forth? Could all this be related to that?
yeah, yeah, it definitely could, right? Because it's going to mess with dopamine reactions. It's going to mess with epinephrine reactions. So pain tolerances may change. Skin is going to change, right? That's the biggest thing that I pay attention to. Do you start breaking out a lot? Do you start getting psoriasis that all of a sudden you never had before? Do you start getting skin problems or gut problems? Those would
I
be my
see
lead.
people get pale.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the if I have somebody I work with from Mexico and he's white, I'm like, dude, where do you work? And he's like, I work in office. I'm like, how many hours?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you, you-
You nailed it right there, right? The use of these devices will bleach you. Why does it bleach you? Let's talk about that for a little bit, right? We talked about the cortisol response. We talked, I just mentioned them, right? We have videos on all of this, right? Of like, hey, how do electromagnetic fields affect your cortisol? They affect your calcium ion channels, those types of things. The other thing that they affect is melanin production. There are studies on this where they have put people in strong sunlight, created melanin, and then put them after in a blue lit room and an artificially lit room, and it diminishes the melanin. It takes it away. Why is that? Because melanin acts as a protector, right? Whenever you induce somebody with an electromagnetic field or blue light field or anything like that, you are depleting melanin because melanin gets used to protect the body against the onslaught of these things. The way that it does it is by creating dopamine, adrenaline, and noradrenaline and raising thyroid temporarily so that it stimulates the sympathetic nervous system. That's what ends up happening, right? That people don't understand that the act of stimulating the sympathetic nervous system is a catabolic process. Most people associate a catabolic process with like breaking down muscle tissue. It it is by definition breaking down of anything. This includes the melanin molecule into other molecules that are helpful to raise the sympathetic nervous system. The act of getting sympathetic is a breakdown process, right? That's why it's beneficial to get parasympathetic for a regenerative process. So when you see that people are getting paler. If you can tell, hey, normally I hold a tan for 2 or 3 days, but then I've started wearing this thing more regularly, or I'm wearing a Whoop band more regularly, or any of these things, or I've recently moved to somewhere where there's more electromagnetic fields, and you start getting paler, I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, you're experiencing more cellular stress at some level. You're at a minimum, and for 100% certainty, you're experiencing more sympathetic stimulation.
Now I'm going into like, okay, how can I reduce all this? And based on everything we've ever talked before, it's like, okay, improve your nutrition, improve your ability to tan, spend more time outside, all that kind of stuff. Can a well-tanned person be less susceptible to any kind of side effects of all these things. And I think we need to start finding out anyone who uses gadgets, do you do you change pigments of your skin? And
Yeah.
does that correlate with how well you feel?
Yeah. I think that you're going to find a surprising link there. And here's the answer to your question. Do darker people, and I don't just mean like racially darker, the fact that you can get darker, right, for your personal skin type.
Dude, I get black in a
You,
day. Just
yeah,
need
yeah, yeah.
some sun.
I've noticed that you can get when you do get regular sun, you get very, very dark, like when you went to Colombia and stuff like that. What, but though at that point in time, when you are at your darkest, you are the most resilient against these types of things because you have a big reservoir of melanin to be protective. We also know that melanin is a chelator of heavy metals. It's a chelator of pollutants. We know this from studies with pigeons. Pigeons in cities are legitimately darker than pigeons outside of cities because they're using melanin on their surface to protect themselves against electronic smog and regular smog and pollutants. Scientists have literally figured that out already. Hey, pigeons are using melanin in cities to protect themselves against the toxic environment of being in a city. Now they are outside all the time, right? So they're able to create a ton of melanin, but the same species of pigeon that lives further away from the city doesn't need as much melanin. So they don't create as much melanin, even though they're still outside as much as the other ones, right? Um, so those types of hacks are legitimately what people should look into. Improving your ability to tan is a big one. It's so underrated, and not just like your face, right? The more of your body, the better, because it's going to be protective from everywhere, especially if you are wearing wearables regularly.
Yeah, I find my digestion improves big time if I can expose my stomach to sun, which is interesting. Uh, let's talk about the future of these things and how we can use it because they're not going to go away. But what do you think is something that's actually useful at moment that's out there? Do you find anything? Like I like ordering because I have observed that if there is a pattern of how much deep and REM sleep it shows me, I can predict how I'm going to feel. And let's be honest, I already know how I'm going to feel, but it just reassures me, hey, you know what? I need to eat this today because my REM sleep was very bad, or I probably shouldn't be pushing myself too hard because my deep sleep has been really bad. Or if it's bad on both sides for 3, 4 days in a row, most likely I'm going to have some immunosuppressant effect. Let's take it really, really smart approach and don't put any stress on my body for a day or two unless I'm looking forward to getting ill. So, what kind of things you see these devices could be really beneficial for in future? Is this things that improve sleep, something that really people should be exploring? Maybe they can explore that sleep thing in a sense that it can give them a precise reading. Hey, your environment is not good enough, so don't rely on this gadget to help you sleep, but find someone who can come in your house, like myself, you, and check your house for electromagnetic field exposure. And maybe you need to change their environment completely. So, what do you see, and what would you recommend people to explore and take advantage of the gadgets they already have?
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So just like you, right, you have an Aura ring, but you don't use it to monitor your HRV. You use a different device for that.
Yeah,
But
I
you
know
use
some
your
people
Aura.
go like, "Oh, my training intensity is this and this." I'm like, "Was it so? It can't do that from your finger."
Right, right. And but the Aura ring gives you other devices like heart rate and depending on the model, right, it's going to give you oxygen signals of like how much oxygen saturation you have in the blood and things of that nature. So data is always good. You just got to be good at assessing the data, right? Like at no point in time am I saying that the data is bad. What I'm saying is if you're just depending on the algorithm of the device to spit out what you should do, that's the wrong way to use any of these devices. The devices should be used as raw data accumulation so that you can make better decisions and you will actually have to think about those decisions. Some people are not good at that. So in those particular instances, I would say take the device off. Don't bother with it. Let's talk about let's see how you feel. Let's see how you improve your sleep. How many times a night you're waking up, if you are waking up frequently versus not waking up as much, and things of that nature. But the devices are tools, right? That's how you should look at them. They are tools, and they should be used sparingly, and they should be used strategically to gain info on whether you're making improvements or not, especially when it comes to like Aura rings and Whoop bands and things of that nature. You should not be wearing them all the time. You should be wearing them maybe for a workout, right? If you wanted to track some metrics of a particular workout to make sure that you're doing it correctly, that would be a great way to use a Whoop or an Aura ring. Um, other ways would be like just monitoring your heart rate while you're exerting yourself if you're not feeling well, or things of that nature, so that you can keep the intensity down if you need to. Those are very good strategic ways to use those types of things. Now, things like the devices that I showed here about sleep, I would use them sparingly in terms of, hey, I'm not going to use this every single night. I'm going to use these to assess if my sleep dramatically improves, because I guarantee you these don't work for everybody. Why would they not work for everybody? Like if you gave it to somebody who doesn't have any sleep problems, they're probably not going to notice a difference between their sleep, right? So if you start to improve your environment, you could wear one of these wearables that are supposed to help improve your sleep. And if you don't start noticing changes, then hey, you're moving in the right direction in terms of improving your environment.
Going on this side, because I travel a lot, would it be kind of good tool for somebody like that who travels a lot to make sure that you don't know what kind of environment you're going to be exposed to? If you take this device and you know it does help you sleep, even if you're in good environment and it doesn't really make any difference, at least you are bulletproof that you will have decent sleep in case you have gone and going to be in a meeting or something like that. You need to be mentally fresh. So use it for
Correct.
2 or 3 days whilst you're away from home, but then come back home and put it away and make sure your environment is good and sound.
Yeah, if exactly. That's a great way to use it, right? Like if you know, right, again, I know that my home is going to be very conducive for good health because I've gone out of my way to build it that way, right? If or you just happen to luck out and you have purchased a home that's not inside a city and things of that nature, and you know that you sleep well, you don't really have a sleep problem or anything like that. This particular device could be helpful if you do happen to be somebody who travels a lot and you aren't going to have control of the hotel that you stay in or the Airbnb that you stay in or whatever, of like as far as like whether it's close to an airport and you're getting irradiated by a radar all the time or whatever, right? These could be helpful in that way. And 2 or 3 days of use, I don't think there's going to be anything of that. Now, having said that, right, if you are somebody of really high net worth, if you're somebody who prioritizes privacy of your mental well-being and your mental capacities, these would be things that I would only use in those types of scenarios because of what I said earlier of, hey, you don't actually know who has access to this device and controls the frequencies that interact with your brain. That is not something to like put off. Like that's a real thing. That's actually the number one crime in the world right now. It's cybercrime. It's hacking databases. It's hacking the ability to control the electronics and the information on your electronic device. If you think the information on your electronic device is private and safe, you're wrong. It couldn't be further from the truth. So
Yeah, and it might sound far-fetched, but we literally had, in my country specifically, built like a radar complex city to monitor USA by Russians, and
uh-huh.
they flattened the whole city because everyone around that city were getting ill.
Yeah,
Like literally, this is not some kind of voodoo whatever thing. It's real, and we know that everything works on different frequencies. Like we communicate on a frequency. It's in front of us. It's a real thing. So
yeah,
the things
yeah.
that this might not affect, like it's happening all the time. We just need to be aware that we can use this in our advantage, and also be aware that that advantage is something that can be taken.
Taken advantage of. Yeah, yeah. right? And if you're allowing that to be right on your head at night while you sleep, that's the time when you're the most influenced, right? When
Mm.
you aren't
Okay.
conscious, when you are regenerating thoughts, when you are solidifying memories, when you are solidifying motor patterns, you literally can be, I'm going to say it in the most controversial way as possible because I want it to sound like that. You can be brainwashed in your sleep unknowingly, and that possibility is higher when you start using a device like these sleep aid devices or anything like that regularly, because you don't know who might be having access to those things.
It's certainly an interesting topic, and with advancements of AI, you never know where it goes, where it leads to. We know that we have been targeted with advertisements. You know that you can literally speak to your device, and you open a phone, and there will be this thing you spoke about. So now, if they can read your brain waves, they can install in your brain. Hey, you know what? Tomorrow, I'll go buy a new car. It's something as simple as that.
That's what I'm saying. Like that's literally what I'm saying. Like most people, when I say you
Not
could be
far-fetched, but
brainwashed,
it could be something like
no,
that.
like what you're saying is probably the reality, right? When I say you could be brainwashed, most people think into like, okay, brainwashed for like bad things or whatever. I'm like, no, no, no. I mean brainwashed into being a good populace. What makes a good populace? You work, you don't complain, you spend your money, period, right? They can brainwash you into, hey, every month you make sure that you spend enough money that you keep going on this rat race that's called life that the government has
Mm.
made out for you. You can be brainwashed into being a good subservient population, right?
And something
These
you
are
also touched up on is we don't need, we definitely shouldn't underestimate the psychological effect of being obsessed with always doing everything optimal or this and that, or always tracking something. It can cause stress. It can cause many, many, many other things, for sure.
yeah, yeah.
It's very interesting topic, and I think there is so much more we can dwell
And,
into.
and this is only the beginning. This is only the beginning. Me and you have been talking about low-level electromagnetic fields, not necessarily saying it like that when we first started, right? But that's what our whole series is about, right from the very beginning, right when we started the Becoming Superhuman series. It was about, hey, we want you to interact with morning sunlight. Why? Because it's got specific frequencies. Did we say it like that? No, because immediately would have, we would have been called crazy. But at this point, we've been saying it long enough, and more people are jumping on the bandwagon that have way bigger followings than us. And this information is literally on our channel that's 3 years old, 2 years old. And
And it's not made
this,
up. It's studies have been
right.
for decades.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know.
This information has been out for decades. We just highlighted it of like, how does it affect you in your day-to-day life and in your day-to-day habits? And now, in this last year, you've got devices like the ones that I just showed earlier today that are literally operating on the same premise. Low-level electromagnetic field stimulation affects your brain. And apparently, in one of them, they have patents for stimulating the effects of CBDC and THC and melatonin. These are chemicals that normally you have to intake, and now they're saying that they can just induce them in your brain by a frequency. That should immediately light off a light bulb like, holy crap. Everything that Juris and David have been saying of how the body works through frequencies and specific timing of the day and all of that, and how they create specific molecules at certain times of the day by the lack of certain frequencies and the extension or the amplification of other frequencies is plain as day now, because now they come out with a device that you can click a button that induces that frequency in the brain, right? And it reminds me of, that's the decentralized way, right? What we're trying to show people is the decentralized way of how the brain and the body works by the environment that you interact with, meaning you change the environment, you change the response.
Mm.
Now, what they're pitching to you is a centralized way. Hey, it doesn't matter where you're at. You can just push a button and we can induce the frequency, right? But here's the thing. You don't actually have control of that. The
Yeah.
manufacturer has
So
control of that.
that is a gray line, you know.
That's the gray line. Exactly. It's the centralized approach, right? Of, hey, everybody should be wearing one of these because you can now control it yourself. That's the illusion. You don't actually, you have control of putting it on and off,
Yeah.
But the actual control of the frequency is dictated by the algorithm, dictated by the manufacturer, and the manufacturer is controlled by the people giving them the money.
Hmm. Yeah, I think the important part is be mindful what you use, how you use it, and certainly don't become dependent on it. If you feel like you always need to use something of that, uh, you definitely need to change your environment because
Yeah.
more often than not, it's going to give you more benefit than downfall. Uh, and like I'm aware of your time, and we could talk hours and hours and hours about like red light and MBST treatments, how they recover cartilage with frequencies and whatnot. Uh, but I'm respectful of your time. I'm going to let you off, David. Thank you again, as usual. And next week, we're going to dig in some deeper topics that are beneficial for all of us.
Awesome.
Thank you.